40 kilometers of Ukrainian territory as a buffer zone. European leaders are discussing one of the options for ensuring post-war settlement in Ukraine, namely the creation of a 40-kilometer buffer zone between Ukrainian and Russian forces. However, there are many disagreements here as well.
The buffer zone and stabilization forces, peacekeeping contingents, that's not it, that's all for later. Yes, it can be discussed now, but for this concept to work, what is needed, no more, no less, is the willingness of the Russian Federation to enter into peace negotiations. And so far, yes, for the war to be able to end.
On August 28th, Zelensky also held an online meeting with the leaders of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Denmark. The main topic was discussing security guarantees for Ukraine.
When we talk about security guarantees, we need clear answers. Who will help us defend ourselves on land, in the air, and at sea if Russia attacks again, and exactly how you can participate? I ask you to define your role.
Nevertheless, Zelensky even noted that he had reached an agreement with Trump for America to be part of the security guarantees. Although earlier we had heard different rhetoric from the US president.
If I may speculate, this is the result of the Washington meeting, both in the format of Trump and Zelensky, as well as in the format of Zelensky with Europe plus Trump, because it was precisely there, in my opinion, that this idea was born to give Ukraine security guarantees that would be very similar to Article 5.
Zelensky also called the shelling of Ukraine on the night of August 28th a blow not only to Ukraine but to Trump himself, and urged Europe and the US to give a clear response to such actions by Russia.
Russia is now actively striking at everyone in the world who genuinely strives for peace and stability. This is a direct and devastating blow to the sovereign nation of Ukraine, and it is also a significant blow to the broader continent of Europe. It is also a blow by Russia against President Trump and other global actors. In Washington, we heard that Putin supposedly is ready to end the war, to meet at the leaders' level and to resolve key issues. But he chooses ballistics instead of any real steps toward peace. Real steps toward peace.
Meanwhile, as everyone awaits a personal meeting between Putin and Zelensky, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz believes that this meeting will not happen, even despite all agreements.
If we look at today, I don't see any reasons that would push Putin toward any personal negotiations again. An example of when he is interested and how he reacts could be the meeting in Alaska. He was practically jumping out of his underwear. That's how much he wanted to fly there, meet and shake hands with Trump. And it was organized instantly.
Russia changed its rhetoric. The Turkish Foreign Ministry reports that Russia no longer insists on controlling the entire territory of the 4 Ukrainian regions. However, now the focus is on holding the front line in Zaporizhzhia and securing for the Russian Federation 25 to 30% of the territory of Donetsk region.
I think this is just white noise because I understand Putin's logic very well, and I don't believe that he could abandon any of his ideas so quickly, right? And here there is no, if he himself had announced it, even then I wouldn't have believed it. But here, after all, these are just leaks and a way to test the waters. How will people react to this? How will they respond? And then they sit back, watch, and build their own strategy based on that.
Meanwhile, The Atlantic even reports that Trump is ready to agree to a peace deal on almost any terms. After all, Russia's rhetoric hasn't changed, and the lack of progress in resolving the conflict only irritates him.
And now Trump's term has already gone well past 6 months. In other words, the political honeymoon is over. Now there are questions being raised about him. Sociological data shows that in fact there are a lot of questions, right? And during this time, Putin hasn't suffered any consequences from Trump. On the contrary, at a certain point, he returned like a butterfly to the top political league and showed the whole world that he could outsmart Trump even on his own turf.
200 billion euros for the reconstruction of Ukraine. The European Commission is developing a mechanism by which nearly 200 billion euros of frozen Russian assets could be used to rebuild Ukraine after the war ends.
The US State Department has approved the sale of more than 3,000 cruise missiles to Ukraine, and they can be launched from F-16, MiG-29, and Su-27 aircraft. Their range is 450 to 460 kilometers.
Right now, I have a normal relationship with Zelensky, but it's completely different from before because we no longer give money to Ukraine. We're making money. Here's what's happening. NATO is buying all the necessary weapons and paying for them. But even so, I want to stop the war.
If the Russian Federation tries to torpedo the efforts of the United States at the moment of ending the war in Ukraine, then accordingly, the Ukrainian side will receive approval from both the President of the United States and consequently the Pentagon to use these strike assets against the territory of the Russian Federation.
Ukrainian intelligence operatives used an FPV drone for the first time to strike a ship carrying caliber missiles.
We're talking about a strike on a carrier of caliber cruise missiles. This is the Project 21631 Bayan-M. What's special about it? The crucial and significant point was that the GUR's advanced drones effectively hit their intended moving targets with remarkable precision. So this is an unprecedented case. Once again, the strike hit the ship's radar, and this significantly reduces the overall capabilities of this particular cruise missile carrier at the present moment, both in effectively countering various drones and accordingly in successfully launching the cruise missiles themselves.
Russian Oral was attacked by drones? The video shows explosions and fire. According to local authorities, an apartment building and several cars were damaged.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
What the heck is going on?
There have been repeated cases when Russian air defense, particularly the Panzer S-1 missile system, instead of shooting down Ukrainian drones, struck residential buildings in Belgorod, in Moscow, and the Moscow region. So this is already, well, a sad statistic of Russian air defense actions hitting their own residential infrastructure.
The crash of drone debris caused a forest fire just 10 kilometers from Putin's palace in Gelendzhik. Because of the fear of drone attacks, Putin has almost completely stopped flying to his residence in Sochi.
You don't live my life. You don't understand what security issues are like. It's just that when a person is far removed from this, they simply don't notice it.
The Russian air defense system is so-called localized. That is, all the main resources are directed at protecting either Moscow, the Moscow region, or accordingly, Putin's residences, both in Valdai and in Gelendzhik. When several dozen UAVs are launched, some of them are indeed neutralized by Russian air defense, but more than 40%, and according to experts, even more than 60%, reach their targets.
Ukrainian defenders destroyed an MTLB armored tractor in the Pokrovsk direction. The number of these vehicles among the Russians is rapidly decreasing since they were produced exclusively at the Kharkiv tractor plant. The infrastructure of the key railway station in Tver was also destroyed.
This concerns blocking the supply of petroleum products, personnel, and heavy armored vehicles that will be used directly on the front line, both on Russian territory, specifically in the Kursk region, and on Ukrainian territory. It should be noted that this is not the first strike on Tver.
Russian diplomacy has set its sights on the fortified belt from Konstantinovka to Kramatorsk, the last important line of defense in the Donbas. But the Ukrainian armed forces do not believe that as a result of negotiations, they will be ordered to retreat.
The Russian Federation fully understands that it is virtually impossible to storm these four cities of the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration, not in the near future nor in the more distant historical perspective. According to assessments by both British intelligence and the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, it would take the Russian Federation at least 4 to 5 years to achieve this. That is why the occupiers are trying to push the theory of either so-called territorial exchanges or proposals like these for the creation of a so-called buffer or neutral zone.
It is obvious that the Russians are unable to achieve the results they want by military means, and no one will agree to give up territories at the negotiating table. But it seems that Putin is not particularly concerned about this, and he is still willing to wage war at the cost of destroying Russia itself.